is coming back strongly. Jobs are setting records. For 2 months ago, they set the record, and then again, almost 5 million new jobs last month, which is a record, and it broke our last record of a month before. So the numbers are happening much faster than anybody anticipated. The stock market, NASDAQ, just hit another record today, and the markets generally are just really a very small amount below where they were at the height of the market when we first had to do this about 4.5, 5 months ago. And it's incredible what's happened. When you look at education, my administration has approved $13 billion for state and local education. We've approved over $6 billion to support colleges and another $6 billion in emergency grants to students, very importantly. We waived standardized testing requirements, deferred federal student loan and interest payments. So you take a look at the student loan program. We've waived student loan and interest payments, and that is something that people haven't been hearing about, and nobody talks about it, but it's a big deal. We've pioneered new treatments that are dramatically improving the health outcomes. Vaccines are doing very well. Therapeutics are doing very well. The therapeutic research has been incredible. And I think you're going to have a lot of big things happening long before the end of the year, both vaccines and therapeutics. Therapeutics is, I guess, a little bit of a word we can use for on the way to a cure, but they make you better. I mean, to me, the therapeutic is even more important than the vaccine at this point because people will get better. But the numbers are, the testing numbers are the highest they've ever been. We're almost up to 40 million in testing, and 40 million people, which is unheard of, far more than any other country, many times what any other country is. And therefore, we have more cases. Because we're doing more testing, we have more cases. If we did half the testing, we'd have far fewer cases. But people don't view it that way. What they have to view, though, is if you look at the chart, and maybe Mike has it, but we looked at it before. If you look at the chart of deaths, deaths are way down. So what we want to do is we want to get our schools open. We want to get them open quickly, beautifully in the fall. And as you know, this is a disease. It's a horrible disease, but young people do extraordinarily well. I was with the governor of New Jersey. We were talking, and he said and he mentioned a number which is a very high number, but it's a number nevertheless, thousands of people. There was only one person that died that was under 18 years old in the state of New Jersey, and that was somebody, I guess, had a problem with perhaps diabetes or something else. But one person out of thousands of people, one person died who was under 18 years old. So that's a pretty amazing stat when you think of it. But I'd like to now just give the mic to our First Lady. She's going to say a few words, and then we're going to go with Mike and Karen Pence. And then we'll go around the room a little bit, say a few words. And Kellyanne, you did a great job this morning. Thank you. Really great. So if I might, First Lady, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. The first pillar of my Be Best initiative is children well-being and taking care of children's social, emotional, and physical health has never been more important than during the COVID-19 pandemic. The administration has worked around the clock to protect Americans from the coronavirus, but many challenges for children and families can be just as invisible as the virus and just as dangerous. When children are out of school, they are missing more than just time in the classroom. They're missing the laughter of their friends, learning from their teachers, and the joy of recess and play. For children with disabilities, without access to technology, or whose homes are not a safe place, the situation can be even worse. As the start of the school year gets closer, I encourage parents, teachers, and school to teach children about the importance of CDC guidelines and to implement them when appropriate. Children's mental health and social development must be as much of a priority as physical health. The same is true for parents. Many will be forced to make stressful choices between caring for their children and going back to work, and we must address those needs as well as their own mental health and well-being. As we continue to come together as Americans to tackle these challenges, I'm honored that you could all be here today to offer your thoughts. I look forward to working with you to make sure that Americans' children and families can be healthy and thriving. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And Governor, thank you. I see you sitting over there. What a job you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here, Governor. Appreciate it.
Proud to be here.
And thank you, Melania, very much. We just heard, Mike was telling me that Governor DeSantis is doing a terrific job. He just announced that the schools will be open in the fall, and we hope that most schools are going to be open. We don't want people to make political statements or do it for political reasons. They think it's going to be good for them politically, so they keep the schools closed. No way. So we're very much going to put pressure on governors and everybody else to open the schools, to get them open. And it's very important. It's very important for our country. It's very important for the well-being of the student and the parents. So we're going to be putting a lot of pressure on open your schools in the fall. Mike, please.
Well, thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for your leadership. I have seen it day in and day out since you asked me to lead the White House Coronavirus Task Force. And today is just one more installment in your commitment to make sure that our states and our families have all the resources they need to meet this moment. Our healthcare workers are provided for, but also understanding that we've got to reopen America and reopen America safely. But we convene all of these great leaders from around the country today, Mr. President, because you know that to open up America again, we need to open up our schools again. And I want to thank all those gathered here for their efforts as well. I know I speak on behalf of my wife, Karen, when I also want to express our profound gratitude to the First Lady throughout this pandemic. Her regard for families, for children, for the emotional impact that this has had on every American is so admirable. And I'd like to invite everyone to show your appreciation for our First Lady and the work she's done for American families. Mr. President, since the moment that we asked the American people to step up, to take efforts to slow the spread, and we, in that 15 days that would become 45 days, we encouraged people to refrain from attending school, if possible, to engage in school from home whenever it was possible. There were two categories of heroes that emerged. One was the parents around America who stepped up as never before. And those that are looking on, those that are represented here should know. Your president, the first family, your vice president, and our second family are grateful for the families of this country and everything you've done to be the teachers for your children, to create the structure at home where they could continue to learn even in a challenging time. I also want to say how grateful we are to the teachers, Mr. President, and I'm actually sitting next to one who I've been married to for 35 years. As you know, she actually teaches in a local school in the Washington area a few days a week, and I watched her go in and pack up crates of art materials that children could come by and pick up and take home to continue their learning. And so I'd like to invite everybody to show your appreciation for the parents and all the great teachers who have done the work of continuing to educate our children throughout this pandemic. It's truly been inspiring. And, Mr. President, the American people deserve to know that while we are seeing rising cases across the Sun Belt, at your direction, we're ensuring that states have the resources, the support, the supplies, and personnel that are actually arriving as we speak in states like Texas and Florida and elsewhere to relieve healthcare workers. And to your point, I hope the American people appreciate the point that you made yesterday on the national stage and did so again today, that because of what our healthcare workers have done because of the innovation and the medicines that we've been able to make available. Literally, we have seen fatalities decline by 90% from some of the worst moments of this pandemic, and we're going to continue to work each and every day to continue to keep those losses low and steady. We're going to save lives as we reopen our country. Today, Mr. President, as you know, we spoke to the nation's governor on the topic of this summit, we reflected on the fact, as now 47 governors and the governors of 2 territories have announced plans to reopen schools across America, that it's important to do so for a variety of reasons. The First Lady just spoke of this. We ought to well be concerned about children falling behind academically, and there's no substitute for in-classroom learning, for in-person learning, and that's been much discussed at the summit today. But as the American Academy of Pediatrics, so well represented here today, recently reflected, there are social costs, emotional costs, and even physical costs to our children across this country that we spoke with the governors today. It's important that we reopen our schools, as you've directed, for the academic and the intellectual development of our children, but it's also vitally important that we remember, as Dr. McCants-Katz told the governors today, that 7 million American children suffer from either mental illness or emotional disturbance, and they principally receive the care from health and mental services at their school. And so making sure that we're meeting the mental and emotional needs of our children, as well as making advances academically, is what brings us here today. The last thing I'll say to all those gathered here, Mr. President, is from early on you have directed our task force and the CDC to equip families and schools and states with the resources to operate. It was as early as March 12th that CDC issued its first guidance for strategies for school and child care services. We issued decision trees in the middle of May, and just last week, I'm pleased to report the CDC published new guidance for K-12 schools and higher education regarding the type of testing that is appropriate and other strategies. Mr. President, we can bring our schools back. And next week, the CDC is going to issue 5 new documents, how to prepare communities to return safely, decision-making tools for parents and caregivers, symptom screening, cloth face coverings in school settings, guidance, and the rest. We're going to continue to flow these resources and this guidance, but as Dr. Redfield told all the nation's governors today, and I want to acknowledge Governor Parsons' leadership and his presence here today, we're truly grateful, is that what you've instructed our task force to do and the CDC to do in this moment is to say to states around the country and to local communities, we're here to help. The CDC has issued guidance, but that guidance is meant to supplement and not replace state, local, territorial, or tribal guidance. In a word, Mr. President, you've made it clear to us, we don't want to be the reason any school doesn't reopen. And so our word to the parents that are looking on, to teachers that are looking on, administrators, leaders in your community, is that we are ready to work with the leaders in your school system and in your state to find a safe and responsible way to reopen your schools. That's our commitment. Mr. President, we're continuing to move out on that, on the belief that to open up America again, we've got to open up America's schools. And the American people are taking important steps every day, including this summit today, to do just that. And I'm truly grateful for all of those represented here for being a part of this important work. With that, I'd be happy to recognize Mrs. Pence for a few comments.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mike, and Melania. I had the privilege of addressing this group earlier today and kind of opening up your summit. But I do want to say thank you to all the teachers. I know at my school, everybody quickly learned how to do online teaching. It wasn't something that our teachers across America were familiar with, and I just applaud them. They have worked so hard. And the parents really are the unsung heroes. They really had to quickly get up to speed, and it was not easy to do. But, you know, our kids are struggling, and they need their friends, and they need their teachers, and they need their routines. This decision to open up the schools greatly impacts our children. It impacts them academically, it impacts them socially, and it impacts them emotionally. So I applaud what you're doing here today, Mr. President, because our kids, for their mental health and their academic health, they need to be back in school. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Karen. I appreciate it. And I see Dr. Redfield over in the audience, and I appreciate it. And I know you'd like to see everybody coming back and getting back to school in the fall. And I've read everything you've written, and I appreciate that very much, Doctor. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Governor, please. Thought we'll go around the room real quickly. We'll go quickly, and we'll get everybody to say a few words, and we'll start with our governor.
Thank you, Mr. President. As you said when you come here, I'm just honored and humbled to be here, sitting with you, the Vice President, the First Lady, and the Second Lady.
It's our honor.
Those dreams you think about someday, you never imagine them being reality, but here we are. And right. so it's an honor to be here today. Let me first start off by just saying thanks to the President, the Vice President, for what they've done over the last, well, since they've been in office, to say the least. But over the last 17, 18 weeks, they've been on the phone every week. The President himself has been. And I don't mean for 5 minutes to say hello, governors, and see you later. In-depth conversation with governors across this state. The Vice President has been there for almost 17 to 18 weeks. I know that I've been following with them. And the one thing they've stressed every day in those phone calls, every week, they're trying to do the best thing for this country and for the everyday people out there, and they were trying to make their full support to the governors across this state. And I just want to thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
For leading as what good leaders do in times of crisis. And I just want to thank you for that. When the President said he was going to put a little pressure on governors to open these schools up, I will tell you this, on a few phone calls I've had with him, he can put a little pressure on you if he decides to do that. I will say that on that. So sometimes we all need a little push to get things going. What the First Lady said when she talked about the kids was so important to me as a grandparent, as a father. I sit there and I think of all the kids that need to be in school. There's the ones that have the privilege of going every day. That's almost common that we go to school for most of the school kids, but a lot of school kids, it's a safety blanket. It's a way to get nutrition. It's a way to get counseling. It's a way for somebody to help them when they cry out for help. And that's also why getting schools back open is so important. And then if you want to take that one step further, it's about making sure people are going to be qualified for the workforce of tomorrow. This virus cannot shut our country down or our states down. We have to deal with it as we would anything else that we've dealt with in this country, and we have to move forward. And economy and life goes on, and education is part of who we are, and kids need to get back in school. Parents need to get more involved in their schools and be back involved in their schools. As I heard speakers today speak, it's part of who we are. It's how we build a future, and I think that's so important. I also want to thank the Second Lady for giving me a little inspiration on a couple of key bills we signed in Missouri, and I want to give you a little credit today. We did full reciprocity in the state of Missouri yesterday. I signed that bill, and full military reciprocity, and the Second Lady kind of gave me a little inspiration for that. And also my daughter's a school teacher. To do that, most of the time we have a father-daughter relationship, except when it comes to teaching, and she becomes a senior advisor to the governor when we talk about those issues on that. But again, I just want to thank the President for his support for our state. People appreciate it, Mr. President. I want you to know that, for the First Lady, and for where we're headed in this country, because we've went through hard times before, and we'll continue to get through hard times, and we'll be better off for it, and we'll be stronger than ever. So thank you.
And you won't be changing the name St. Louis, will you?
No, we will not be doing that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's very important. Thank you very much. Please.
Good afternoon, Mr. President. I'm delighted to join you, the First Lady, the Vice President, and the Second Lady here today to talk about why it's important for children